Chapter 4685. After some time, Qin Mo finally let go of her. He Huan's face was burning. She kept staring at Qin Mo, unable to say a word. His eyes were sparkling, and it was indescribably moving. This was their first kiss since their reunion. Unlike a dragonfly touching the surface of the water, it was a real kiss. Both of them were breathing heavily, especially He Huan, who leaned back in her seat. Then, looking at Qin Mo helplessly was enough to melt his heart. Qin Mo turned sideways and stared at her. The look in his eyes made her tremble. He Huan didn't dare to move, as if he would do something she couldn't bear if she moved, like kissing her for another half an hour. After staring at each other silently for about half a minute, Qin Mo finally laughed. "Silly girl, it's not your first time kissing. Why are you acting so silly?" He Huan bit her lip. "I don't remember." He laughed. "Think about it carefully." After half a minute, she covered her face with her hands. They had kissed. He had kissed her during her first period, very gently. When she was asleep, he said that she had grown up. But He Huan still didn't feel that she had grown up. Qin Mo smiled and pulled her hand away. "All right, get out of the car. You're still acting like a little girl." "I am a little girl." He Huan mumbled and looked at him sadly before getting out of the car. Qin Mo also got out of the car and naturally held her hand, like an old married couple holding the hand of a little girl. He Huan noticed something was different. She looked around and asked, "Why didn't you bring your bodyguard today?" "Because you don't like it." He laughed and said casually. He Huan didn't say anything else. She looked down at her hand that was holding his. She struggled a little, but she wasn't really trying to break free. Qin Mo just smiled. When they arrived at the mall, He Huan finally understood why he didn't bring his bodyguard. He thought that there was no one here except for the salespeople. There was only one person at the door, and that was Secretary He. He Huan tilted her head. "Qin Mo." Qin Mo smiled. "I've bought it over. The employees here are all transferred over from King Entertainment. There's no need to worry about any sudden incidents." He Huan was speechless. "If I go abroad, I could buy a shopping street, too," he said quickly, smiling. He Huan didn't know how other girls felt when a man threw money at them. She just wanted to say that she felt very good at this moment. Well, she heard that he was her legal husband, so it was wrong to spend money like this. She could only think that she didn't want it to be like this. "Oh, next time I'll bring a bodyguard." She didn't want to go bankrupt and starve. Qin Mo smiled. Then, He Xiaohuan realized that she had been tricked. He had done it on purpose. He deliberately let her follow the bodyguards. He was too cunning. He Huan glared at him. Qin Mo pretended that he didn't know and still had a smile on his face. He Huan snorted. He was too despicable. So she walked in front. But she had only taken 2 steps when Qin Mo grabbed her wrist. Qin Mo smiled. "Let's walk together." She glared at him fiercely. Qin Mo patted her little head. "Silly." "I'm not silly," she emphasized. Qin Mo didn't say anything more. He just held her hand and walked around with her. Secretary He followed behind them with a notebook in his hand. As long as He Huan looked at it for more than 10 seconds and touched it, he would write it down and get someone to bring it over. Chapter 4686. Secretary He followed behind them with a notebook in her hand. As long as He Huan looked at it for more than 10 seconds or touched it, she would write it down and get someone to bring it over. As long as the little baby was happy. Secretary He couldn't make the decision on her own since Qin Mo's birthday present had to be picked by He Huan herself. After all, she was paid by President Qin. He Huan went to a few men's shops. Qin Mo didn't like this one, neither did Qin Mo. He Huan felt that his taste was novel. Well, in other words, it was weird. When they arrived at a jewelry shop, He Huan said meekly, "I'm not buying it." Qin Mo looked at her and stretched out his finger. "I think I'm missing something here." He Huan snorted again. "You can only lie to young girls if you don't wear it." Qin Mo looked at her and smiled. "Do you think I would lie to someone like that?" He Huan was stunned for a moment before she looked a little angry. She didn't know how to hide her emotions at 18 years old. Qin Mo pulled her back, his voice gentle. "What's wrong? Are you angry again?" "I'm not." She was angry. Qin Mo reached out and pinched her little face. He thought it was funny. "Really?" He Huan didn't say anything at first. Then she said sullenly, "Go find it if you want." Qin Mo was amused. "How did you know I was looking?" As he spoke, he smiled and said, "Help me pick a ring." He Huan was in a bad mood. She didn't know why she cared so much. He had just said something normal and it was the truth. Therefore, when Qin Mo was choosing, she was always absent-minded. Qin Mo picked a ring. It was just a simple ring, but it looked different on his finger. "How about this?" Qin Mo's voice was warm and smiling. He Huan was actually blinked, but she still had to be reserved. Hence, she just hummed perfunctorily. She didn't move her eyes away from his hand. "Fingers, so beautiful." Qin Mo smiled again and said to the counter, "Do you have the same style of women's ring?" The receptionist immediately smiled like a flower. "Yes, yes." "Mr. Qin, please wait a moment. Let me check Mrs. Qin's finger size first." It was He Huan's first time being addressed as Mrs. Qin, so she was a little flustered. She bit her lip for a long time before saying, "I'm not." Qin Mo suddenly looked at her, making her unable to say those words. Then, she obediently showed her palm to the receptionist. The receptionist quickly took out a delicate ring and put it on for her, saying, "This is the only one in the world, designed by a famous designer. It suits Mrs. Qin very well." He Huan wanted to deny it again, but in the end, he could only look at Qin Mo weakly. "Very beautiful." Qin Mo's gaze fell on her fingers. This was something he should have done when she was 18 years old. He should have settled on her when she was 18 years old, but he had fulfilled his wish many years later. Qin Mo's eyes were a little hot. He looked at her for a while and pulled her out. He Huan whispered behind them, "You haven't paid yet. You're leaving." "I ordered it," he said softly. Then he stopped and smiled. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have found such a suitable size." He Huan stood and looked up at him. Suddenly, she reached out and took the ring off her finger. The inner ring was engraved with a circle of words, Qin Mo 1 love 1 He Huan 1 love 1. Chapter 4687. Her lips trembled slightly, and then she called out softly, "Qin Mo." Qin Mo replied, took the ring from her hand, and put it on for her. "Don't cry." Qin Mo grunted, took the ring from her hand, and put it on for her. "Don't cry." He Huan tried her best not to cry, but she still sniffed disappointedly. Qin Mo placed his palm on her hair and rubbed it gently. "You've grown up." As he said that, he still couldn't hide the feeling in his heart, and he leaned forward to kiss her. All the salesgirls in the mall were watching this scene. My God, President Qin looked so soft. Oh my God, there were pink bubbles floating everywhere, and it was even more romantic than those idol dramas. It was mainly because of his looks. He was really tall, rich, and handsome. After the kiss, Qin Mo straightened up and said in a low voice, do you feel like you're in love now? Huan bit her lip and suddenly hugged his arm, not letting him straighten up. Emo said in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Huan hung on his arm like a little bear. Emo looked at her for a while and smiled gently. "Do you want me to kiss you again?" She didn't speak, but just looked up at him quietly. Emo smiled and leaned forward to kiss her again. After the kiss, he said in a low voice, "Are you satisfied?" "A little," she stammered, and her eyes fell on his lips without moving. Emo straightened up and held her hand. "Let's go eat." Huan asked as they walked, "Is this enough as a birthday present?" He said, and then lowered his head to look at her. "Plus you, it should be enough." Huan's face turned red again. She didn't remember what she ate that day. When she really came back to her senses, Emo had already driven back to the apartment. "Why aren't you getting out of the car?" He tilted his head and looked at her. Huan was still floating, and her voice sounded absent-minded. "We're home." The corners of his lips curled up slightly. "What else can I do?" Huan nodded, unbuckled her seatbelt, and was about to get out of the car. But her wrist was immediately caught by a firm hand and pressed gently against the back of the chair. Emo, Huan turned to look at him weakly. He was very calm and still had a faint smile on his face. If one didn't truly feel it, one wouldn't be able to tell that he was being forcefully treated. Emo gently pinched her chin with his other hand. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" "What are you talking about?" Huan felt even more helpless and kept looking at him. Emo smiled and let go of her. The pressure on Huan's wrist was released. She was stunned again and looked at him. Emo opened the car door and turned around. "I thought you would always say that you were very happy." Huan exclaimed again and was speechless for a long time. "Fool." He got out of the car and went to her side. He opened the car door and carried her out. Huan refused, so he patted her and said, "Be good." Huan bit her lip and mumbled, "I don't want to be good." Emo laughed happily. He carried her home and kissed her a few more times. He was very satisfied with the way they were getting along, and Huan temporarily forgot about Rongyu. After all, the 40-year-old Emo was not like the 20-year-old. A mature man was very good at coaxing women, and Xiaohuan couldn't resist him at all. When they got home, Emo went to the study to deal with some business for a while. He told Huan to take a shower and go to bed. But when he returned to the bedroom, he saw that the little thing was not only not taking a shower but was still playing games. Chapter 4688. Huan was still playing the game, and she was very engrossed in it. Emo took off his sweater and threw it on the back of the sofa before sitting beside her. He pulled her ear. "Oh no, you're still playing games so late." He looked at his watch. It was already past 11 o'clock. He felt that Huan's crime was unforgivable. Huan cried out in pain as he pulled her ear, but she couldn't bear to put her phone down. Her fingers were still moving. Emo snorted. He didn't carry her anymore and put her back on the sofa. The little guy didn't have the eyesight and was still playing. Emo whispered into her ear, "Is it fun?" "It's fun. I passed a few levels today." Huan didn't notice the danger and was still playing happily. Emo smiled and walked to the bathroom. "I'm going to take a shower." Huan didn't suspect anything else. She nodded and let him be. Emo looked at her again at the bathroom door and then closed the bathroom door. In less than 10 minutes, Emo came out of the bathroom. He was wearing a bathrobe and holding a towel in his hand. He wiped the water off his hair and looked at the phone in Huan's hand. Just as she was about to pass the level, he suddenly pulled the phone away. Time to sleep. Ah. Huan's small body bounced up. Chin Mo took the phone and helped her log out. He looked at her and said, I said I was going to sleep. With that said, he pulled her to lie down and covered her with the blanket. Huan opened her eyes and looked at the darkness that followed. She was speechless. She punched the blanket. Chin Mo, you're being unreasonable. He said, Is that so? I gave you a chance, but you didn't listen and kept playing. Oh yes, is the game fun? Huan's voice was soft again. You're being unreasonable. Chin Mo ignored her and closed his eyes to sleep. Huan lay straight and stared at the darkness. I want to take a shower. I stink. Chin Mo. She called him for a long time before he reluctantly responded, Well, you lost the right to bathe because of playing games. Do you regret it now? Huan was shocked and glared at him. However, this stare was not obvious in the darkness. He smiled again. Huan, you're really a dirty kid. She couldn't take it anymore and cried out, You're the one who didn't allow me to take a bath. Did I? You were the one who gave up. He chuckled. Huan gnashed his teeth. Chin Mo, you're too despicable. Chin Mo patted her shoulder. That's what you have to do with a disobedient child. No, a young girl who's addicted to the internet. He took a sniff, and then said hatefully, It really stinks. Huan wanted to cry. Although she wasn't that stinky, she had been pampered since she was young. It was a good habit to take a shower before sleeping. She couldn't sleep without it. After a long time, she finally believed that Chin Mo really wouldn't let her go. She curled her lips and bit her lip. After a long time, she said in a low voice, Chin Mo, am I not easy to take care of? Yeah, you're more troublesome than Huan. He closed his eyes and reached out to rub her fluffy hair. Huan should at least be more obedient. Huan leaned on his shoulder and bit her lip. Then you can send me to Enchanting. You can take care of Huan. Chin Mo was shocked. She could do this. Could she be more shameless? Chapter 4689. Updated quickly, Chin Mo was shocked. She could do this. Could she be any more shameless? Chin Mo looked at the middle-aged girl and did not react for a long time. He did not know that Huan could be so shameless. She was really shameless. Chin Mo sat up and turned on the light. Then he looked at Huan, amused and annoyed. Enchanting is so young, yet he has to take care of you. Huan said confidently, Didn't you say that he took care of Huan? You also said that I am not as good as Huan, so taking care of me is not a problem for him. Chin Mo did not know whether to laugh or cry. Huan, can you be any more shameless? There is nothing wrong with this logic. Her little face looked very lively when she was reasoning with him. Chin Mo stared at her face for a long time and suddenly sighed softly. Yes, there is nothing wrong with it. However, if there was anything that was logical, they would not be together now. He sighed softly. You. Huan was a little proud of herself. Her face was full of vitality. Chin Mo reached out and touched her face. His voice was a little hoarse. All right, go take a shower. Don't do it again. Huan immediately jumped off the bed and ran to the bathroom. Chin Mo did not go to sleep immediately. He sat on the bed and swiped his phone to help her pass a few levels. He heard Huan humming in the bathroom. She is still taking a bath. He thought to himself. However, the atmosphere was still pleasant. After Chin Mo cleared the 5th stage, Huan also ran out. She was wearing pajamas with a cartoon cow on it. Chi Nemo put his phone on the bed, caught her, and put her under the quilt. She smelled good. Well, it was good for sleep. However, the little girl, who had just taken a bath, was not sleepy. She probably slept too much during the day. She kept pestering him to talk, mainly because she wanted to see Yi Huan. Chi Nemo was silent for a while in the darkness. Then, he tilted his head and looked at the little head on his shoulder. His voice was slightly hoarse. Do you really want to see him? Yi Huan grunted and said softly, can you let me see her? Maybe I can be a good mother. Chi Nemo was still looking down at her. After a long time, he suddenly said, let's meet tomorrow, but not for the time being. Shen Ting can take good care of her. Yi Huan felt a little hurt. He patted her head and said in a low voice, listen to me. Shen Ting knows her better than you do. Moreover, I want to live alone with you for a while. Then when can I live with Yi Huan? She's my child, isn't she? Yi Huan asked hoarsely. Chi Nemo smiled. Of course. Otherwise, how could I have given birth to him? Yi Huan glared at him. I'm not joking. I'm not joking either. Like you said, she's your child. No one can take her away. Chi Nemo kissed her cheek. We'll live together in autumn. Yi Huan looked at him. So long. Then winter will be fine. Chi Nemo chuckled. So, the little girl who had been disgusted for a long time immediately said, autumn is autumn. We can't delay it any longer. Besides, she stretched out her white fingers and counted one by one. Besides, I want to see her once or twice a week, including but not limited to eating, bathing, and sleeping together. Chi Nemo was annoyed and amused. Are you treating it as a family? Isn't life just eating, bathing, and sleeping? Yi Huan asked him back, which made him stumped. Chi Nemo thought about it and realized that it seemed to be like that. Chapter 4690. Chi Nemo thought it was right and couldn't refute it. Yi Huan's eyes were sparkling. After a long time, Chi Nemo suddenly reached out to cover her eyes and let out a long sigh. Time to sleep. Yi Huan snorted. You can't beat me. He smiled. Yes, I can't beat you. Mrs. Qin, it's time to go to bed. Yi Huan leaned against him with satisfaction. After a while, she suddenly said softly, Chi Nemo, yes. Chi Nemo touched her little head. What's wrong? Yi Huan's face was even tighter. We must have had a good life before. He nodded again. Yes, it was. So she said with great certainty, you must love me very much. Chi Nemo really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pressed her into his arms. Don't talk. I have a meeting tomorrow. Yi Huan was obedient for a while, and her voice came out again. You just love me very much. Chi Nemo was helpless and sighed again. Yes, I love you very much. He lowered his head and kissed her. Okay, time to sleep. Yi Huan put her arms around his neck and didn't say anything. She was always in poor health and fell asleep after a while. When she woke up in the morning, Chi Nemo had already gone to make breakfast. She sat up and leaned against the headboard, biting her little finger and thinking, what is he waiting for? Of course, Yi Huan wouldn't take the initiative. She just bit her finger and sighed in her heart. She couldn't admit what she was looking forward to. Chi Nemo finished making breakfast and came to wake her up. He saw the little girl sitting there nervously. Chi Nemo smiled. What are you thinking about? Get up. Come to the company with me today, and I'll take you back to the villa tonight. Don't you want to see Yi Huan? Oh, Yi Huan replied, feeling motivated for the whole day. She sat up and messed up her hair. "Where shall we sleep tonight?" He probably knew her desire and smiled warmly. "Let's sleep in the villa. Come back tomorrow." Huan was a little excited. She nodded and ran to the bathroom. Qin Mo smiled, feeling a little complicated. To him, Huan's behavior was good, and he was happy about it. However, to Huan, she might lack a little maternal love. After all, Huan was a middle-aged girl now. How could she give Huan any maternal love? It was better to count on Enchanting than Huan. As Qin Mo was thinking, Huan had already come out. After breakfast, they went to King Entertainment. However, Huan had not expected to meet Rongyu at King Entertainment. Didn't they say that his health wasn't very good and that he would have to stay in the hospital for a few days? Why did he come here? Huan was having some snacks at Secretary He's place when Rongyu pushed the door open and entered. Secretary He cursed in her heart. She had forgotten that Rongyu was here today, and Huan was here as well. If President Qin knew about this, he would be extremely jealous. But no matter what, she still welcomed him warmly. "Mr. Rong, President Qin is in a meeting. It will end in about half an hour. Why don't you wait in the guest room for a while?" Rongyu's gaze fell on Huan's face. Huan was also looking at him as she ate the snacks. In her memory, she liked Rongyu, but now he had a wife. Huan couldn't lie to herself and say that she didn't care or like him anymore, but she had to restrain herself. He had a wife. She just stared straight at him. Secretary He groaned in his heart. What would he do if President Qin saw this? Chapter 4691. The more he thought about it, the more likely it would happen. Secretary He's heart was still trembling. Qin Mo was already standing at the door of the secretary's office. He knocked on the door with the file in his hand and said to Rongyu, "Let's talk in my office." Secretary He heaved a sigh of relief. President Qin was still magnanimous. Just as he thought about it, Qin Mo looked at the little girl and coughed lightly. "Stay here and eat." Secretary He, the second and third secretaries were speechless. President Qin was so stingy. But Qin Mo wasn't ashamed of it. Instead, he was proud of it. He had to keep a close eye on his wife, especially a lost lamb like Huan. He talked to Rongyu for a while. The script was secondary, and the main topic was AI Jia. It was time to close the net. The information and evidence that Qin Mo had brought was enough to send AI Jia to prison for 10 or 20 years. While they were chatting, Rongyu lit a cigarette but was stopped by Qin Mo. "Don't smoke. Qin Chen said that with your broken body, it's best for you to quit smoking and women. Women can't be helped, but you can quit smoking, right?" So Rongyu just smiled and stopped smoking. He put the cigarette between his fingers and lit it. After a while, he suddenly looked up. "Actually, Huan has always liked you, not me." Qin Mo was a little surprised. "Conchao told me." Rongyu smiled calmly. Maybe a bystander sees things more clearly. Conchao has always been an outsider, so he sees things more clearly than we do. Qin Mo nodded slightly. "I got it." Rongyu thought that Qin Mo should have known, but he knew and expressed his feelings to the 33-year-old Huan. Facing Huan who had returned to the past, he was also helpless. Rongyu left quickly. Huan watched him pass by from the secretary's office, her eyes wide open. She thought that Rongyu would just walk away, but when he was about to reach the elevator, he suddenly turned to look at her and gave her a warm smile. Huan felt a little relieved. She thought that perhaps after so many years, she had come back to the present for this relief. She waved at Rongyu. The warmth in Rong Yu's eyes deepened, and he finally left. Huan lowered her hand and said to Secretary actually, Meng Meng isn't too bad. Rong Yu will be very happy, right? Secretary also smiled faintly. Yes, they are quite happy. Huan made a face at him. I'm relieved. After that, he ran to find Qin Mo looking at Huan's back. Secretary thought to himself, at his age, President Qin would probably be rejuvenated to be with such a young girl. Huan went to Qin Mo's office. Qin Mo was reading documents calmly. She went over and pressed on his shoulder from behind. Her voice was a little delicate. Don't you have anything to say to me? Qin Mo's gaze was still on the file in his hands. He smiled faintly and said, what else is there to say? We have been husband and wife for a long time. Rong Yu also has a wife. If I must say something, I still want to tell you that you are mine. Huan stuck out her tongue and sat on the armrest of his chair. In just a short while, she was pulled into Qin Mo's arms. Huan protested softly. Qin Mo, aren't we an old couple? An old couple shouldn't be so intimate. We have always been like this. He caressed her hair and chuckled. Huan's face instantly turned red again. She couldn't say a word. Chapter 4692. Updated quickly, when Rong Yu returned to the hospital, Meng Meng was sitting on the sofa in the ward with a book in her hand. It was Rong Yu's work. She sat there and read it quietly. Rong Yu pushed the door open and entered. Meng Meng immediately put down the book and stood up. You're back. He nodded and sat down with her. It's just a script. Why are you so worried? Meng Meng looked down. Rong Yu, it's not that I'm worried. You're not in good health. Dr. Qin also said that you'd better not write scripts. He looked at her and smiled. I'm just interested. Meng Meng looked at him and wanted to say something. She wanted to tell him about the 40 million yuan, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. She was too weak and naive. With her around, Rong Yu might have a hard time. 40 million yuan was enough for Rong Yu to spend for the rest of his life. He could find any kind of caregiver and nanny. She thought to herself that she would only harm him. It would be hard and she would lose the respect of men. Meng Meng closed her eyes and didn't want to think about what had just happened. Jia came to her again. This time, Jia didn't want money. When she was waiting for Rong Yu in the ward, she received a call from Jia. Later, they met in the corridor of the hospital. Jia took off her mask and sneered. Rong Yu wants to kill me. He wants me to go to jail. Meng Meng was stunned. She didn't know what to say. She didn't have any affection for Jia and she also thought that Jia deserved to go to jail. She was too evil. However, she knew in her heart that Jia's visit was definitely not a good thing. So she looked down and said, I can't help you. Really? Jia sneered. You can't help me, or you don't want to help me. Or maybe you want me to go to jail until I die of old age. You must think that I deserve it, right? At this time, Meng Meng really wanted to say yes. But she couldn't. She knew that Jia was crazy and she could do anything. As expected, when she was silent, Jia spoke again. Rong Yu is really not that smart. He thinks that he can do anything to me just because he has evidence. Too naive. Jia took out a brown paper bag and placed it in Meng Meng's hand. Take a look at this. You will know if you can defeat me. Meng Meng's fingers gripped the craft paper, her fingertips turning white. She really didn't want to read it, but she knew in her heart that she had to. His hands trembled as he opened it. His expression changed as soon as he saw what it was. Ai Jia actually, Ai Meng Meng looked up, her eyes filled with indescribable exhaustion. Yes, exhaustion. She lost. Rong Yu also lost. Qin Mo and He Huan had both lost. Ai Jia was a crazy woman. What she had was enough to send everyone to hell. We still underestimated you. Ai Mingming's voice was very soft. What do you want me to do? Surrender. Ai Jia chuckled. Are you still the sister I know? Aren't you very unyielding? Ai Meng Meng closed her eyes. I surrender, but the final outcome will not be what you think. It won't be what you think either. Ai Jia sneered. I forgot to tell you that the guy who treated you like that, Lu Gui or Li Gui, is out. I heard that he has some wonderful photos in his hands. Meng Meng, think about Lu Gui. He's talented and good-looking. How can he not find a woman? Don't you think you're a little too narcissistic by tying him up like this? Chapter 4693. It's not what you think. Ai Jia sneered. Ai Jia sneered. I forgot to tell you that the guy who treated you like that, Lu Gui or Li Gui, is out. I heard that he has some wonderful photos in his hands. Meng Meng, think about Lu Gui. He's talented and good-looking. How can he not find a woman? Don't you think you're a little too narcissistic by tying him up like this? Ai Meng Meng slowly opened her eyes and stared at Ai Jia for a while. Then she said calmly, I know. Can I leave him? Please let him go in the future. Ai Jia smiled sharply. I can't guarantee that I'll let him go, but I can guarantee that without you, Rong Yu will be much more relaxed. Ai Meng Meng didn't say anything. She just lowered her eyes and smiled after a while. Ai Jia, you loved someone. Ma, did you love a man named Xin Lu? I don't think you love him. You just think that you love him. In fact, you don't love anyone. You only love yourself. She paused for a moment, then said slowly and firmly, You're a selfish lunatic. She scolded her so harshly, but Ai Jia didn't care. The only thing she cared about was whether Ai Meng Meng was obedient. However, Ai Meng Meng didn't want to talk to her anymore. She just said, I'll leave tomorrow. Ai Jia, I can leave, but I won't let you go if you hurt Rong Yu. She paused for a moment. You should know that we share the same blood. There's nothing I can't lose, so I'm willing to do anything. Then, she stared at Ai Jia for a few seconds. That gaze made Ai Jia uncomfortable, but at the same time, it felt very familiar. Later, she remembered that she often looked at Ai Jia with a sinister and ruthless gaze. When she was almost done with by Ai Meng Meng in the end, she thought that they really had the same blood. When she went crazy, she wouldn't even recognize her own family. But now, Ai Meng Meng had Rong Yu. She didn't dare to act rashly, and Ai Jia wouldn't easily touch Rong Yu. What she wanted was the Qin family's share. Fame, wealth, and glory that belonged to her. She had to get it back bit by bit. At this moment, Rong Yu and Ai Meng Meng were talking, and she was in a daze for a while. What's wrong? Rong Yu asked softly. Ai Meng Meng shook her head. I'm fine. Since things were going well, Rong Yu was in a good mood and chatted with her. I met He Huan just now. Ai Mingming's heart skipped a beat when she heard He Huan's name. She bit her lower lip and asked in a low voice, and then. Rong Yu looked at her and smiled. I thought you would react more. I won't think too much about it. She said softly, Rong Yu, that's all in the past. He Huan has always been nice to us. She was not a cold-hearted person. She was originally a person who had been abandoned. She was content to receive so much. She couldn't forgive herself for what she did to Yi Huan in the past, but Yi Huan didn't hold it against her. Instead, she helped her so much. Although it was for Rong Yu's sake, it was enough for Ai Meng Meng to appreciate it. She was not an ingrate. Rong Yu was relieved when she said that. However, he didn't know that Ai Meng Meng had other thoughts. He was too tired and couldn't focus. If he didn't take an afternoon nap, he would have noticed that something was wrong with her. Chapter 46-94. At 2 in the afternoon, He Huan received an unfamiliar call. At 2:00 in the afternoon, He Huan received a call from an unfamiliar number. He Huan froze for a moment, then said softly, "What's up?" Ai Meng Meng said, "Is it convenient for you to meet me?" Ai Meng Meng said, "Is it convenient for you to meet me?" She said hurriedly, "I'm in the cafe downstairs at King Entertainment." He Huan found it strange and bit her lip. "Rong Yu just came in the morning, why didn't you come with him?" Ai Meng Meng said something in a low voice that He Huan couldn't hear clearly, but she still went downstairs. Of course, there were 2 bodyguards and a secretary by her side. She pushed open the cafe door and saw Ai Meng Meng sitting by the window, holding a cup of hot coffee in her hand, lost in thought. He Huan went over and sat opposite her. The bodyguards and secretary sat at the next table, paying close attention to the surroundings. Ai Meng Meng looked up at He Huan and said, "Director He." He Huan smiled. "Call me He Huan. I'm not Director He anymore, I don't even know what a storyboard is." Ai Meng Meng said softly, "But to me, you will always be Director He." He Huan couldn't stand it. Besides, she didn't know what happened later, so it was really difficult for her. But she still gave face to Ai Meng Meng. She was still a love rival. He Huan pretended to be relaxed. Ai Meng Meng kept holding the cup, looking like she wanted to say something. He Huan looked at her, her eyes fixed on her. After a long time, she asked softly, "Did you quarrel with Rong Yu?" Ai Meng Meng shook her head, then nodded vigorously. He Huan was a little embarrassed. Just then, the secretary came over with a cup of hot fruit tea. He Huan took a sip and drank half a cup before saying, "Rong Yu is very good, Ai Meng Meng, treat him well." Ai Meng Meng shook her head again. "No." He Huan looked at her in bewilderment. Ai Meng Meng gripped the cup tightly. "I might leave here, I want to go back to my hometown." In the future, as she spoke, she looked straight into He Huan's eyes. "Can you take care of Rong Yu for me?" He Huan was stunned. Her mouth was wide open, and she only recovered after a while. "No. I still need someone to take care of me. I'm begging you, He Huan. For the sake of you and him, and for the sake of how good Rong Yu is sick and can't travel far. He can only stay in the city where Qin Chen is, so please take care of him." Ai Meng Meng bit her lips. This time, He Huan knew that she was telling the truth. She sighed softly, "Why did you leave him?" Ai Meng Meng held the coffee in her hand. "My existence will only harm him. He Huan, I have to go." As she spoke, she stood up as if she was about to leave. He Huan was still sitting there. She looked up and said, "Ai Meng Meng, you can't leave if I don't want you to." "Yes, I can't leave, but I know that you will let me go for the sake of Rong Yu." Ai Meng Meng smiled bitterly. "I can't stay any longer, the ending will not be good." As she spoke, she took a simple piece of luggage and walked towards the door. The secretary asked softly, "Do you want to tell President Qin?" Huan sat there quietly. After a long time, she smiled faintly. No need. She did not know why she did not want to stop Ai Meng Meng. She always felt that stopping her would be the cruelest. Chapter 4695. She could tell that Ai Meng Meng loved Rongyu very much. She would not have left him unless she had no other choice. Therefore, she would not stop her if she wanted to leave. Even if Rongyu blamed her or Qin Mo misunderstood her, she would still do so. Afraid that she would be interrogated by Qin Mo, Huan sat in the cafe downstairs for another half an hour. Half an hour was enough for Ai Meng Meng to disappear into the crowd. The afternoon after that was a little chaotic. After Ai Meng Meng disappeared, Rongyu ran out of the hospital and drove around looking for her. Of course, he could not find her. He also looked for all the major airports and high-speed rail stations, but there was no news of Ai Meng Meng. He was sure that she had left in a taxi and could not have gone back to her hometown. However, the world was so big and there were so many cities around B City. If someone wanted to hide, it would not be easy to find her. Because of Ai Meng Meng's disappearance, Qin Mo also helped, so the plan to see Huan at night was delayed. Late at night, Rongyu dragged his tired body back to his apartment. At the door, he saw Huan sitting in front of his door. Rongyu stared at her for a while with his bloodshot eyes. He took out his keys and asked in a hoarse voice, "Why are you here? How did Qin Mo let you out?" Huan patted the dust off her body and stood up. "I snuck out. Also, I saw Ai Meng Meng today, your wife." Rongyu was about to open the door, but he froze. He turned his head and looked at Huan. His voice was extremely tense. "You saw her?" Huan nodded. "Yes, I saw her. She came to me and said that she wanted to leave and you could only stay in B City. She said that she would only be a burden to you if she stayed by your side. She asked you not to think about her anymore." Huan, who was 18 years old, was very straightforward. Rongyu had known her for a long time, so he knew her well. He looked at Huan and suddenly reached out to grab her arm. His voice was hoarse. "Why didn't you tell me what happened?" His grip was very strong. Huan felt pain in her arm. She struggled, but could not break free. "Rongyu, let go of me. It hurts," she cried out in pain. However, Rongyu acted as if he did not hear her and asked again, "Why didn't you tell me?" Huan was in so much pain that he murmured, "Because she said she would hurt you." "Is she telling you that you can chain her up or watch her 24/7 like a prisoner?" "Rongyu, Ai Meng Meng loves you. She won't leave you unless she has to." Rongyu stared at Huan for a long time before he closed his eyes. "Where is she?" "I don't know either." Huan bit her lip. "She only said that she's going back to her hometown. I don't think she'll go back. I heard that it's very far away and it's not easy to take a shower. Ai Meng Meng seems to like cleanliness." Rongyu stared at her and saw that her pale face was most likely frozen. He opened the door. "Come in." As he spoke, he moved sideways to let Huan enter with him. After closing the door, Rongyu wanted to pour some water. Huan quickly said that she could do it. Although she was not in good health, she was much better than the sickly Rongyu. Moreover, he looked very haggard, as if he was going to go into shock at any time. Huan looked at him secretly as she poured the water. She was afraid that he would take things too hard. Rongyu sat on the sofa and said after a while, "Drink some water. I'll call Qin Mo to pick you up." Chapter 4696. Rongyu sat on the sofa and calmed himself down before saying, drink some water. I'll call Chin Mo to pick you up. However, Huan didn't agree. She said softly, I'll take a taxi myself. Yu glanced at her and she didn't say anything. After a while, she said softly, Ai Meng asked me to take care of you. Yu froze. After a long while, he let out a long sigh. It was only then that he realized how difficult it was for Chin Mo. Even he couldn't communicate with Huan anymore. He let out a long sigh. You can take care of me for a day, but can you take care of me for the rest of my life? Sure. Huan looked at him. You can hire a nanny. Yu didn't say anything. He just called Chin Mo and asked him to pick her up. However, in less than 5 minutes, there was a knock on the door. Yu rested his forehead on his elbow and said softly, Go and open the door. It should be Chin Mo picking you up. Huan bit her lip. Yu, I'm worried. All of a sudden, he was a little angry. If you're worried, why didn't you call me earlier? She looked at him and finally understood that he still blamed her. Yu got even angrier and felt a little regretful and guilty. He was the one who vented his anger on her. Actually, Ai Mingming's departure had nothing to do with Huan. In fact, Huan had always been the victim in this incident, but he was fierce to her. Huan's eyes were a little watery, but she held back her tears and said softly, She'll come back one day. Yu, she didn't make things difficult for you, so you shouldn't make things difficult for her either. Yu looked at her. After a long while, he suddenly felt that Huan was right. Yes, it would be difficult for him to keep Ai Meng by his side. She wouldn't be happy, and she would be forced to open up the wounds of the past. He remembered that night at the door of the study, she asked him softly, Yu, can you stop investigating? He always thought that she was trying to avoid it, but he had forgotten whether he had hurt her or not. Everything he did was for her own good, but she could not accept it. Yu was startled for a moment, then he smiled indifferently. I understand. Then, she sighed. Go and open the door. Don't let Chin Mo wait too long. I'm fine. Huan was worried, but she was also afraid of Chin Mo at the door. Now that Yu had relented, she immediately ran over to open the door. Sure enough, it was Chin Mo at the door. He was dressed in a black coat with snowflakes on his body and a cold aura around him. Huan turned sideways and whispered, It's snowing. Chin Mo only took a glance at her before looking past her to Yu. He looked at Huan. We have something to discuss. Go to the kitchen and cook some noodles. The simplest is fine. Yu is probably a little hungry. Huan felt that he was being very generous today. She did not know that Chin Mo was only at ease because he thought that she would not eat well. He chatted with Yu for a while. Chin Mo had been helping him the whole afternoon, so Huan had actually come to Yu's house. He really wanted to beat her up. After Chin Mo and Yu finished their conversation, Huan came over with a bowl of porridge and said guiltily, Yu, just make do with it. Even if Yu was not from a wealthy family, he had never eaten such a poison. He looked at Huan and then at Chin Mo. Then, he understood that Chin Mo was telling him that Ai Meng was more suitable for him. Huan did not know how to cook now. He lowered his head and smiled. I can eat it after sprinkling some sesame oil on it. Chapter 4697. Then, he understood. Chin Mo was telling him that Ai Meng was more suitable for him. Huan didn't know how to do anything now. He lowered his head and smiled. I'll just sprinkle some sesame oil on it and it'll be ready. Seeing that he was really eating, Huan wanted to say something, but Chin Mo dragged her out. He said in a low voice, let him be alone for a while. Rongyu doesn't need anyone to accompany him now. He just wants some peace. He Huan nodded and followed him out obediently. Rongyu was left alone. He slowly put down his hand that was eating the noodles and looked at his phone quietly. It was as though he was waiting for someone, waiting for a call. He had called her countless times today. The phone was always hot, but it was always switched off. He wondered if there would be a day when it would become an empty number. Rongyu was afraid, but he was even more afraid that if he disregarded everything, he would be gone when Ai Meng Meng came back one day. He wouldn't be able to come back. He could only wait for her here. And he wouldn't stop doing what he had to do. Ai Meng Meng had left, so he had no reason to stop. Rongyu returned to the master bedroom. There was a letter and a leather bag on the bedside table. The letter was written by Ai Meng Meng, telling him that she had left. And in the leather bag was the signed transfer of all her assets. She had returned everything he had given her, and there was also a card. She said in the letter that she was sorry that she had used 40 million. Other than that, Ai Meng Meng also left him a divorce agreement. She had signed it. She wrote in the letter that it was fine if he did not sign it. One day, when he met someone he wanted to live with, he could sign it. It was a letter of less than 1,000 words, but she had said countless apologies. Rongyu read the letter over and over again. She said that it would be tough for him with her around. Yes, it would be tough. But without her, what was the point of it? When Rongyu put down the letter, something fell from it. It sparkled when it landed on the ground. It was their wedding ring. Rongyu frowned slightly and picked it up. He stared at it for a long time before muttering bitterly, "You didn't even take this with you." After that, he made a call to his personal financial advisor. After checking, he found out that Ai Meng Meng had only brought 100,000 yuan with her. 100,000 was not enough for her. Renting a small apartment in a place like B City could only last her for half a year. Moreover, He Huan was used to a good life. Rongyu could not imagine what kind of life she lived outside. But he could not find her, and he did not even dare to look for her again. Because He Huan said that Ai Meng Meng had no choice. Ai Meng Meng's last resort was Ai Jia, right? Rongyu sneered. Outside, He Huan stood at the door and looked at Qin Mo guiltily. Qin Mo, when did you know I was here? Qin Mo glanced at her. Are you going to defend yourself now, or are you going to beg for forgiveness? He Huan bit her lip and shouted, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I ask for forgiveness? Still not wrong. He reached out and rubbed her hair. No matter why Ai Meng Meng left, you should let Rongyu decide for himself. You should not make the decision for him. As he said that, he sighed. If they can't see each other in the future, it will be such a pity. And you let Ai Meng Meng go. He Huan bit her lip. I also think that you have ulterior motives. He interrupted her with a faint smile. Mrs. Qin, tell me, what are you trying to do? Chapter 4698. After Qin Mo asked this, He Huan looked at him and asked softly, what are you suspecting? Qin Mo's gaze was calm. He Huan, you have the memory of when you were 18, so I can let it go if you let Ai Meng Meng go. But now that you're here with Rongyu, shouldn't you think about my feelings? He Huan still stared at him. There's nothing between us. Qin Mo nodded. There's nothing between us, but He Huan, you are my wife. I hope, he said to her seriously, at least tell me before you see Rongyu, especially when you go to his house. He Huan digested it for a while and then said in a low voice, are you discussing with me or ordering me? Qin Mo quickly said, I think there's no difference between the two. He thought she would be angry, but Huan only said after a moment of silence, I see. At this time, the elevator arrived and Qin Mo pulled her in. Huan's head was still hanging low. What's wrong? Are you angry? Qin Mo smiled and pulled her hair. Huan shook her head and then lowered her head. I'm not like what you think. Qin Mo's heart skipped a beat and he said in a gentler voice, what do I think? Huan felt very wronged when he asked this gently. She bit her lip and said in a low voice, I don't like Rongyu anymore. Qin Mo grunted. His voice was a little long, but it also had a kind of meaningful meaning. Huan was a little annoyed. He's married. I won't like him anymore. I know, Xiaohuan is also a tsundere, he said. Huan stared at him. She felt that these words sounded different when they came from his mouth. She couldn't tell what was different. It wasn't until she went to bed that Huan realized something was wrong. Didn't he say that she was his wife? How could he talk about another man in such a doting tone? But now she just felt strange. Qin Mo didn't say anything else. After exiting the elevator, he didn't start the car. There was a thin layer of snow on the ground outside. He looked at Huan and said, there's a mutton restaurant a few hundred meters ahead. Let's go there for supper. As a matter of fact, they hadn't eaten dinner yet, so they were really tired and hungry. Huan looked at the fine snow in the night sky and nodded. All right. Qin Mo turned sideways and helped her put on her coat and hat. Then, they walked into the dark night together. The fine snow was a little cold on her face, and her hands were also a little cold. Huan quietly put her little hand in his pocket to keep it warm. Qin Mo just turned his head to look at her and then put his hand in his pocket as well. Huan hummed comfortably. His hands were so warm. In the dark night, they walked side by side, the snowflakes quietly melting on their shoulders. Huan felt that she was enjoying this wonderful moment. She was so happy that she wanted to jump up and down. However, she soon realized that she shouldn't be happy today. After all, Rongyu's wife had run away, and she was the one who let her go. Therefore, Huan put on a serious face again, which made Qin Mo want to laugh very much. But he just reached out to rub her hair and smiled. You're so cute. I'm not cute. She looked at him with a face full of disdain. Huan didn't forget that she was actually a 33-year-old woman. He didn't have good intentions by using the word cute to describe her. Qin Mo smiled. What else? Sexy, beautiful, or dignified, are these more suitable for you? Chapter 4699. Huan snorted. Do you think I don't have any? If I don't have any, how could you have liked me for so many years? Qin Mo smiled faintly and continued to walk forward. Originally, Huan did not expect him to answer. However, after a long time, he said, if I like you, then I like you. I won't like you because of these things, and I won't stop liking you just because I don't have you anymore. Huan was stunned. She did not quite understand what he meant. Qin Mo and Huan stood face to face in the gentle snow. Under the street lamp, Huan's little face was a little red from the cold. He should have felt sorry for her, but at this moment, he was a little tempted to look at her. It had been a long time since he saw her face so red. At this moment, it was as if they had really returned to the past, to the time when she was 18 years old, and he was still the man who could not be controlled. He liked her, but he could not confess. Suddenly, Qin Mo's voice became hoarse. Huan, when you were 18 years old, was there only Rongyu in your heart? He thought that he still minded. He minded that she had left him like that and liked someone else. He Huan was still stunned. She stared at Qin Mo and said after a long time, I don't know what it was like at that time, but this time, it's different. Qin Mo lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. It was just a small gesture, but He Huan's face was red and her heart was racing. She took a step back, but Qin Mo reached out and hugged her waist. His voice was hoarse. Is it because Rongyu has a wife? He Huan was dumbfounded. No, it's not exactly like that. She did not know how to explain it to him, but Qin Mo did not need her to explain. He kissed her. In the gentle snow, in the cold winter night, it was very warm. At least, after kissing him, He Huan felt that her hands and feet were warm, and her face was a little hot. She secretly thought to herself, shouldn't he be angry? Why is he so calm? So, when they walked together, she secretly looked at him. Qin Mo seemed to know what she was thinking and smiled, I'm just giving in to you. Just don't cross my bottom line, eh? He said, as if unintentionally. Oh, He Huan replied. Somehow, he felt that he had been fucked. She really couldn't understand the world of a mature old man. He looked so angry at the beginning. He should have been in a cold war with her without hesitation, or he should have used force or something. She was ready. In the end, he had prepared for nothing. It turned out that a 40-year-old man was so gullible. He Huan stole another glance at him and smiled. Qin Mo also smiled and said nonchalantly, waking up and finding such a perfect husband is something I should be happy about. He Huan pouted. What do you mean by found? You're mine to begin with, all right. Qin Mo couldn't help but turn his head to look at her. Then, he said in a very low voice, I'm yours, but are you mine? He Huan pretended not to understand. What's yours and mine? Don't pretend. He smiled. You knew it, but you still ran away. He Huan knew that she couldn't provoke him anymore. She hugged his arm and leaned her face over. She sighed and said, Qin Mo, we're an old couple. Let's be pragmatic. He was annoyed and amused at the same time. She really learned fast. He Huan continued to hug his arm, and her voice was as soft as a little lamb. Qin Mo, I suddenly realized that you're really good. Chapter 4700. He Huan knew that she couldn't provoke him anymore, so she hugged his arm and leaned her face over, sighing. Qin Mo, we're an old couple now, let's be more pragmatic. He was annoyed and amused at the same time. She was a quick learner. He Huan continued hugging his arm, her voice as soft as a lamb's. Qin Mo, I suddenly realized that you're really nice. I think that you've done something modest, that's why you're so attentive. How could Qin Mo fall for her trick? In his eyes, the 18-year-old He Huan was as transparent as glass. She couldn't see through him, but he knew everything about her, the kind that one would know on any given day. Later on, they had supper together. The mutton hot pot was nice and warm, and they walked for a while before returning home. He Huan thought that she would catch a cold, but she didn't. When she got home, she removed her jacket, but her body was still warm and comfortable. It was the same for Qin Mo. His complexion was especially good, probably because he had eaten mutton, hence, he went to the bathroom to take a shower. He Huan sprawled on the sofa and played games for a while. Qin Mo looked at her quietly for a while at the bathroom door. Seeing that she didn't know anything, he sighed and entered the bathroom with a towel. When he came out of the shower, he confiscated the phone from a child. It's getting late, time to sleep. He Huan bit her lip, wanting to bargain. However, the moment she touched Qin Mo's fingers, she froze and said softly, Qin Mo, why is your hand so cold? didn't you just take a shower? Chin Mo didn't explain. He just stared at her with his black eyes. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. After a long time, Chin Mo said, "Go take a shower and sleep." She replied with an "oh," and then ran away in a puff of smoke, as if there was a ghost behind her. Huan went to the bathroom. As soon as she closed the door, her heart started pounding. She calmed down for a while and scratched her hair. How disappointing. It's just a small matter, and you're acting like you've never seen the world before. He grabbed his hair and sat on the edge of the bathtub while he turned on the water in the bathroom, thinking absent-mindedly. Chin Mo looked like, but he didn't. Huan's thoughts were all over the place. In the end, she didn't even notice when she took a bath with shampoo. When she went out, she felt that her skin was particularly slippery. She sniffed it in disgust as she walked back to the bedroom. Chin Mo had already laid down and was leaning against the headboard, wearing a bathrobe. The bedside lamp was on, and the dim yellow light shone on his body, making him look young and handsome. Huan secretly thought that he was still as good-looking as he used to be, even more mature. Chapter 47:01. Chin Mo looked up and saw her. He smiled and patted the spot beside him. Time to sleep. He turned off his phone and placed it on the bedside table. Huan didn't come over. Instead, she grabbed a pillow and hugged it to her chest. She pursed her lips and said, "The room is quite stuffy. Chin Mo, why don't I sleep in the guest room tonight?" Chin Mo looked at her and found it a little funny. He knew why. He pretended not to know and leaned against the headboard. "Really? It's stuffy." Huan nodded. "Yes, it's very stuffy." Chin Mo remained calm and collected. "It's winter. How could you be like this? Could it be that you're sick again?" Huan took a step back. "I'm not. I just want to sleep in the guest room." But he had already shown his bad taste. He reached out to grab her and coughed. "I'll get the thermometer." He stuffed Huan into the quilt. Huan moved, but Chin Mo held her shoulder with one hand. He was indescribably domineering. Her palm-sized face was blank. She swallowed her saliva and felt like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Chin Mo quickly brought the thermometer over and asked her to open her mouth to take her temperature. Huan bit her lip. "It's under the armpit." Chin Mo didn't insist and let her do as she pleased. Huan put the thermometer down and didn't say anything. She stared at Chin Mo for a minute and couldn't help but say, "I just feel stuffy. I'm not uncomfortable." "Chin Mo, don't make a fuss." Chin Mo held back his laughter. "You have an illness to be treated and a problem to be solved." Huan didn't say anything. Chin Mo took the thermometer and looked at it. "It's 39 degrees. Huan was shocked. She leaned over. "That's not possible. How could it be?" She looked over and saw that it was 37 degrees. "You're lying," she accused. She was a little angry that he was teasing her. Chin Mo's voice was still very slow. "Oh, if there are no more questions, you can go to sleep." Huan wanted to get up. "I'll sleep in the guest room." Chin Mo reached out and pressed her shoulder. "It's so late. Stop it. I won't do anything to you." "Aw." Huan's mouth was wide open. Chin Mo smiled again. "Didn't you say you were an old couple? I've only taken a bath, and you're already so scared." Xiaohuan, you're not calm, are you?" He nodded in understanding. "It's normal for a young lady to be curious. I can understand." As he spoke, he even reached out his hand and patted Momo's little head, as if he was treating a puppy or kitten. He Huanlei arrived. After a while, he snorted and said, "Our married life can't be like this, right?" "Of course not, it's much more exciting than you can imagine." He smiled meaningfully and lay down beside her. Hooking his arm around her, he said, "All right, it's time to sleep, little girl. I have a meeting tomorrow and I'm exhausted. Stop fooling around, or else I'll settle the score with you for today." He Huan was scared. She didn't dare to provoke him, so she obediently closed her eyes and went to sleep. After a while, she actually fell asleep. Qin Mo, on the other hand, didn't fall asleep. He tilted his head and looked at her sleeping face. It was very quiet and very beautiful. He couldn't help but smile. She probably didn't have Rongyu in her heart anymore. Otherwise, she wouldn't have slept so well. He could still remember how haggard He Huan was when Rongyu got into trouble. She didn't sleep for several days and nights. When she begged him, she was so humble. At that time, she threw away all her pride and self-esteem for a man named Rongyu. Chapter 4702. In the end, they slept together in the master bedroom. He Huan felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what it was. In the quiet night, Yi Huan, who was in Qin Mo's villa, was still awake. Yi Huan sat at the door, looking at the fine snow outside and sighing. It was already past 10 o'clock at night. Enchanting came over and squatted beside her. "Aren't you going to sleep?" Yi Huan turned her head to look at him, then looked at the fine snow in the night and sighed. "Daddy said he would bring Mommy back, but he didn't come back. I haven't seen Mommy for so many days. Brother Enchanting, do you think Daddy wants to monopolize Mommy?" The more the little girl thought about it, the more likely it was. Daddy had a criminal record. Just thinking about this possibility made Yi Huan Qin angry. She held her chin with her little hand and looked at the night. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Does Mommy not recognize me anymore?" She had heard it from Grandma Lan. Enchanting simply sat beside her, tilted his head and smiled. "Auntie has just become a little fairy. The kind that can fly away." Yi Huan whispered, "Can she fly?" Enchanting laughed. "I won't." "No, he thought for a while and said slowly, she just forgot about the things that happened after. For example, she forgot that she was married, forgot that she gave birth to Yi Huan, and also forgot about my existence." His palm fell on little Yi Huan's hair, and his voice was slow and gentle. "She just accidentally forgot. If she had a choice, I don't think she would choose to remember. Yi Huan, forgetting is even more painful for her because the world has changed. It is not the world in her memory. She needs to get to know the world again, to know Uncle Qin, to know you, and to know me, right?" Yi Huan looked at him. Enchanting said warmly, "Not only does she need to know us, but she also needs to know the world. Isn't it very hard?" Yi Huan wavered. She looked at Enchanting eagerly. "Is it hard?" Enchanting said firmly that it was very tiring. In fact, He Huan was sleeping soundly in Qin Mo's arms at this time. She was sleeping very soundly. Moreover, Qin Mo didn't ask her to know the world or anything. He Huan didn't intend to know the world either. She only needed to know Qin Mo, and she would be able to know the world. Even if Yi Huan and Enchanting didn't know each other, it wouldn't matter. However, Yi Huan was still waiting and struggling. She didn't know that her papa was going to take her mother for himself. The kind that didn't want a single bite. It was late at night. Although there were heaters everywhere in the villa, the spring night was still very cold. Yi Huan was still waiting. Enchanting couldn't bear to wait any longer. He lowered his voice and said, "All right, it's time to sleep." Yi Huan said eagerly, "Brother Enchanting, will Mom come tomorrow?" Enchanting looked at her expression and knew that the little girl really missed Yi Huan. So he gently touched her shoulder and smiled. "I'll call Auntie tomorrow, okay?" Yi Huan stared at him. "Will Mom come?" Enchanting smiled. "She should want to see you too, but something happened today, right?" "Oh," Yi Huan said. She got up and stretched out her arms. "Brother, carry me." Enchanting smiled faintly. In fact, Yi Huan was still young. She liked Yi Xiangnan, but she still relied on him. She didn't know what it meant to like him. But he couldn't refuse. He bent down and picked her up. Then he walked upstairs easily. Chapter 4703. Enchanting helped her to sleep. He sat by the bed and read, waiting for Yi Huan to fall asleep. Yi Huan put her little head on the pillow and said softly, "Brother, tell me a story." Enchanting smiled, closed the book in his hand, and gently told a few stories to Yi Huan. And the little fellow also fell asleep slowly. In the middle of the night, her porcelain white face was quiet and beautiful. Enchanting looked at her quietly. After hesitating for a moment, he reached out and gently put his hand on the center of Yi Huan's hair. She was too young and carefree. Perhaps feeling the warmth of his palm, Yi Huan automatically leaned towards him, like a kitten. Enchanting smiled slightly. The night was getting darker. He should have fallen asleep at this time, but he didn't want to sleep at all. He just read a book by her bedside, quietly guarding her until 1 o'clock in the morning, when he had no choice but to sleep. Enchanting fell asleep. He lay on the edge of the bed, and next to him was the little Yi Huan. On the other side of the city, Yi Xiangnan was sitting in front of the computer in the single room of the school. The screen was turned on, and his slender fingers were tapping on the keyboard. After a while, he looked up the information on the side. He didn't finish until 2 o'clock in the morning. He stretched and drank half a cup of cold coffee. He had long been used to such a high-intensity study life, but he was not used to it. He was alone. And Qin Yi Huan was taken care of by Enchanting. There was something unknown in Yi Xiangnan's eyes. He turned off the computer and lay on the bed with his clothes on. He was not afraid of loneliness, but he somewhat missed the little fellow. Yi Xiangnan's slender body suddenly sat up, silently looked outside, and then directly got up and walked outside. He opened the door. It was very cold outside, and it was snowing. Yi Xiangnan climbed over the wall and took a taxi to the Qin family's villa. It was also the place where Enchanting and Qin Yi Huan lived together. Yi Xiangnan also climbed over the wall to get in. Of course, there was a sophisticated security system here, but he had been there many times and would avoid it. After he entered, he used his palm to open the door and quietly and elegantly went upstairs to Yi Huan's bedroom. It was already late at night, but the lights were on. Yi Xiangnan pushed the door open a little but didn't go in. Because there was someone else inside. Yi Huan slept soundly. Enchanting sat on the sofa beside the bed, his head leaning against the pillow. He was only about 5 centimeters away from Yi Huan's little face. Their breaths were even in sync. Yi Xiangnan watched quietly from the outside. He wondered if it was going to be like this every day. They were together all the time, day and night. He knew that he cared about it and was fussing over it, but he couldn't afford to. If this was an arrangement, it was more like a bet. Yi Xiangnan couldn't afford to lose, so he could only endure. He told himself that everything would be over if he rushed in. He was destined to be eliminated for breaking into the Qin family at night. So, no matter how uncomfortable he was, no matter how much he cared, Yi Xiangnan still retreated. The slender and thin figure left the villa. Yi Xiangnan smoked for the first time. Because of depression, longing, and irritation. Of course, his smoking was later found out by Yi Mubai. As a father, he didn't say anything. He just patted his son's shoulder. I was younger than you at that time. It's normal to be depressed. Just don't get addicted. Even if he got addicted, he had to wait until he took over the company. Chapter 4704. Early in the morning, Enchanting woke up first. He looked at Yi Huan. Yi Huan was still sleeping. Her little face was tilted on the pillow, and there was saliva at the corner of her mouth. That look was indescribably funny and cute. Enchanting couldn't help but smile. He reached out to wipe away her saliva, and silently looked at her for a while, then got up and went downstairs to personally make breakfast for Yi Huan. He would just make spaghetti, she should like it. As soon as he went downstairs, the villa's security guard came over. He looked troubled. Young Master Enchanting. Enchanting wasn't used to being called that, but he knew that it was the Qin family's rule. He nodded. What's the matter, Uncle Li? Uncle Li scratched his head. I have something to ask. Something happened in the villa last night. Enchanting walked towards the kitchen. Is it important? It's not important, but it's also very important. I just want to tell young Master Enchanting first and let you decide whether to tell Mr. Qin about it or not. Uncle Li was very smooth and slick. Everyone who worked in the villa knew who was in charge of the Qin family in the future. Now that Miss Yi Huan was under young Master Enchanting's control, everyone knew that young Master Enchanting's opinion was very important. He was definitely not an idle person raised by Mr. Qin. Furthermore, after observing him for the past few days, he was truly an outstanding young man. He was also very intelligent, and Miss Yi Huan was also very obedient to him. The rarest thing was that young Master Enchanting was very amiable towards his subordinates, but he had a natural imposing aura around him that made others not dare to act rashly. Uncle Li spoke for a long time, but it was as if he didn't say anything. Enchanting started making spaghetti and asked, "What happened?" Uncle Li chuckled. "Someone came to our villa last night. A thief." Enchanting paused and frowned. Uncle Li quickly waved his hand. No, if you have something to say, just say it. It's not a story." Enchanting glanced at him and then continued to make the spaghetti. Uncle Li felt a little indescribable. He broke out in a cold sweat and quickly said, "It's like this. Young Master Xiangnan came over last night." This time, Enchanting completely stopped what he was doing. He turned off the fire and turned his head. "Yi Xiangnan." Uncle Li broke out in a cold sweat. "Yes, it's young Master Yi." Enchanting knew that he was overreacting, so he softened his expression and voice. "What time did he come?" Uncle Li coughed softly. From the surveillance footage, it was around 3 in the morning, but they left very quickly, less than 5 minutes later. Enchanting stared at him for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Don't tell Uncle about this. I'll change the security guards. This won't happen again in the future." In fact, he also knew that it was unnecessary. With Yi Xiangnan's arrogant personality, he must have seen him in Yi Huan's bedroom and probably wouldn't come again in the future. But he still had to put on a show to reassure his subordinates. Uncle Li couldn't be happier with this arrangement. Although it was young Master Yi, he wasn't one of them. If Mr. Qin found out, he would say that they were useless. They let a living person in the middle of the night. The security guards of the Qin family's villa were said to be impenetrable. If Mr. Qin found out, he might fire them. Chapter 4705. Updated quickly. Now that Shinting said this, he was relieved. He let out a long sigh and smiled. Thank you, young Master Shinting. Don't say that everyone says you are really kind. Shinting smiled faintly and didn't say much. He continued to make the spaghetti. After he was done, he saw that it was still early, so he didn't immediately wake Yi Huan up. Instead, he went to the security room. Other than Uncle Li, there were two other young men in the room. They looked uneasy. Shinting greeted them faintly and pulled up the surveillance footage from last night. Then, he saw all of Yi Xiangnan's actions. He was wearing jeans and a black hoodie. He was very tall and thin. He looked like an ordinary young master who wasn't very particular. Shinting watched quietly. He knew that with Yi Xiangnan's personality, he wouldn't do something like climbing over the wall unless he couldn't take it anymore. Moreover, Shinting was in this villa. Shinting saw it and his face was actually slightly hot. After all, he saw Yi Xiangnan and Yi Xiangnan saw him. His actions were seen by his rival in love. Shinting was a young master in his teens after all. He was a little annoyed. So, even though he knew that Yi Xiangnan wouldn't come again, he still personally upgraded the security by a few levels. This action of his made Uncle Li and the other two somewhat dumbfounded. This was too amazing, wasn't it? Uncle Li directly raised his finger and said to the other two, "Little bunnies, now you're convinced by young Master Shinting." Shinting looked up. "Uncle Li, this is my major course." Uncle Li's eyes widened. "Holy shit, I've never seen a computer before in my life. Young Master Shinting, your hands are just like those in the wuxia movies I've seen. You're so good with your hands. You're so good." Shinting laughed. "How can there be such amazing skills? I'm just a little more familiar with them. In the future, you can also take a look at the books." Uncle Li waved his hand. "That requires talent. We don't know how to do that. We just need to focus on our work." In the past, they had all thought that Shinting had been chosen mainly because of his steady personality and good looks. But now, they knew how outstanding he was to be able to say that. Sigh, it's like choosing a son-in-law in ancient times, there are layers upon layers of hurdles. Therefore, Uncle Li was full of praises and didn't know how to praise him. Shinting was a little embarrassed and waved his hand. "All right, Uncle Li, I'll go wake up Yi Huan." Uncle Li remembered that young Master Shinting was not only knowledgeable, but he also knew how to take care of people. His culinary skills were also top-notch. If he was Little Miss Yi Huan, he would also choose young Master Shinting. Although young Master Yi was good, he was not as considerate as young Master Shinting. "The more I look at him, the better I feel." When Shinting walked out, his face was a little hot. In fact, he should have told Qin Mo about what happened last night, but he didn't. He wasn't doing this for Yi Xiangnan, but for selfish reasons. Because he himself wasn't a straightforward person. Yi Xiangnan had barged into the villa, but he, Shinting, had stayed in Yi Huan's room and not left. If this matter got out of hand, he would be more embarrassed than Yi Xiangnan. Although he didn't do anything out of line, he didn't want others to know. He would rather protect this beauty. He thought that if she grew up and chose Yi Xiangnan, then these nights shouldn't be known by others. And Yi Xiangnan would probably mind too. Shinting stopped. He thought that he seemed to be subconsciously giving in. He thought that Yi Huan was Yi Xiangnan's. Chapter 4706. Shinting stayed in the dining room alone for a while, then slowly went upstairs and took on the role of a nanny to wake Yi-Hwan up. Yi-Hwan made a sound, her small body curled up and she was hugging a pillow. Her face was buried in the pillow. Shinting smiled and reached out to touch her. "All right, get up. I still want to sleep for a while." Yi-Hwan opened her eyes and said cutely. Shinting couldn't help but smile. "I'm making spaghetti today." Yi-Hwan opened her eyes at once. Her eyes were as wide as a calf's. She stared at Shinting for a while and said in a childish voice, "Is it the kind where I can have one bowl?" Shinting didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded. "Yes, one bowl for you." Yi-Hwan immediately sat up and started to put on her clothes. Shinting smiled. "I'll wait for you downstairs." He took care of Yi-Hwan, but he didn't know how to babysit. Although Yi-Hwan still liked to laze around in bed, she already did most of the work herself. Shinting was very busy, but he would also teach Yi-Hwan some things. Anyway, Chin-mo could rest assured that Yi-Hwan would be in Shinting's care. After Shinting finished speaking, he went downstairs. Yi-Hwan quickly tidied herself up and skipped down the stairs, looking very happy. She seemed to have forgotten everything that happened last night and was full of energy again. Shinting sat at the dining table and looked up silently. Then, he smiled. "Come here." Yi-Hwan sat over obediently. Shinting pushed the spaghetti over and smiled. "Eat." As soon as he finished speaking, the little guy let out a cry of "wow" and started eating with gusto. Shinting smiled and said, "Eat slowly." Little Yi-Hwan looked up at him but still ate very quickly. Big brother Shinting's cooking was really delicious. After finishing the plate, although she wanted to eat more, her stomach was a little full. Moreover, she knew that Shinting would not make a second plate. Sure enough, a beautiful small cup was placed in front of her, filled with juice. Yi-Hwan took it and sipped it contentedly. She looked at Shinting curiously. "Brother, why don't you eat this? Why do you only eat bread and drink milk every day?" Shinting froze for a moment, then smiled gently. "I'm used to it." Yi-Hwan was still looking at him. "Brother, what do you mean by habit?" Shinting's young and handsome face blushed a little at her question. He lowered his head and drank a mouthful of milk before answering Yi-Hwan seriously. "It's just that I've persevered for a long time. There's nothing bad about it. I just want to keep persevering." Actually, Shinting didn't have any special preferences for food. As long as it wasn't too disgusting, he could tolerate it. There were also some external things that he wasn't obsessed with. In fact, for the first 14 years, all he had to do was to learn all sorts of knowledge and continue to excel. If you asked him what he wanted, he wouldn't be able to say it. But after he saw Yi-Hwan's photo, he felt that everything he had learned in the past was meaningful. What he was obsessed with and picky about was nothing more than the person he was walking with. After Shinting finished his explanation, Yi-Hwan still didn't understand. After all, she was still too young. She couldn't understand such deep logic. Shinting didn't expect her to understand either. He only smiled gently and reached out to touch her hair. "Quickly finish drinking. I'll send you to school in a while." Chapter 4707. Yi-Hwan asked pitifully, "Will Mom come back today?" Shinting didn't say anything and just looked at Yi-Hwan quietly. After a while, Yi-Hwan whispered, "I know. Mom is learning to understand the world." After she said that pitifully, Shinting looked at her quietly. He found it a little funny, but he also felt sorry for her. He suddenly made a decision. When he helped her carry her little school bag, he said gently, "I know. Mom is learning to understand the world. He suddenly made a decision. When he helped her carry her little school bag, he said gently, I'll take you to see Mom after school, okay? Huan's originally listless face suddenly became lively. She stared at Enchanting for a long time before she whispered, but brother, do you know where Mom is? Enchanting pinched her little face. I'm going to Uncle's company in the afternoon. I'll take you with me. This time, Huan was really happy. She carried her school bag and skipped to school. Enchanting smiled and followed her into the car. After getting in the car, he suddenly thought of Yi Xiangnan again. He pursed his beautiful lips and then looked at Huan. You're going to stay with the Yi family for a few days next week. I'll buy you some comic books that you like to read. Next month, which was also Yi Xiangnan's military training, he chose to take Huan to stay with him for a few days. It could be considered as a way for the two children to cultivate some childhood feelings. Enchanting knew that he couldn't object to such an arrangement, so he respected it. Besides, Huan was still very young. He didn't want his attitude to scare her. When he said that, Huan was a little hesitant. Although she wanted to see brother Xiangnan, she also missed her mom. She bit her lip and whispered after a long time, I still want to be with Mom. Enchanting smiled faintly and reached out to rub her hair. He only said okay and didn't say anything else. Huan sat beside him like a little puppy. Perhaps because her parents weren't around, she was especially dependent on Enchanting and treated him as her everything. It seemed that brother Xiangnan wasn't that important at this time. If an analogy had to be made, Enchanting was like bread, and Yi Xiangnan was love. If people were given a choice, of course, the first choice would be bread. Without bread, how could there be love? Of course, at such a young age, Huan did not understand. She only knew that she wanted to be with Big Brother Enchanting because she missed her mother and Big Brother Enchanting had a way to bring her to see her mother. Huan was a little excited just thinking about it. As for brother Xiangnan, he was immediately thrown to the back of his mind. In the afternoon, the chauffeur first picked up Enchanting, then went around to pick up Huan. The two of them went to King Entertainment together. The receptionists in the company all knew Enchanting, and Huan was even more familiar with him. Logically speaking, Huan was the only heir, but everyone in King Entertainment knew that Enchanting was the future owner of King Entertainment, so they all tried to curry favor with him without batting an eyelid. Although Enchanting was young and did not come from a wealthy family, he was already used to such small situations. He nodded calmly and took Huan to the elevator. Coincidentally, Huan was brought to the company by Qin Mo. Enchanting went to Qin Mo's office first. Secretary he saw him at the door and was a little surprised. Young Master Shin. Then her gaze fell on Huan, still a little hesitant. This, Enchanting's voice was especially calm. If anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility. Secretary he, of course, believed him, but she was still a little worried. President Qin, he, might need some time. Chapter 4708. Memorize. Enchanting was insistent. He looked at Secretary he calmly and said, Huan misses her mother. Secretary he was also a woman in her 40s. She was also touched. Enchanting really doted on Huan. Secretary he was so touched that she immediately decided to let him go. She smiled and said, then I won't tell President Qin. Enchanting nodded. I won't say that I met Secretary he either. Secretary he sighed in her heart. What a sensible child. Look, she already knows how to work in the workplace at such a young age. She's very experienced. She'll definitely not be easy to deal with in the future. Perhaps in a decade or so, she would be able to work with Enchanting, and Enchanting would become her new boss. That day was just around the corner. Secretary, he thought about it but left quickly. After all, she was a veteran in the workplace. Enchanting watched Secretary he leave quietly. Huan suddenly reached out and grabbed his hand. Her voice was soft. Why did Auntie he run so fast? Enchanting couldn't tell her about it. He just smiled and said, she has her own things to do. She has work to do. After he said that, his attention fell on Huan's hand that was holding his. Her little hand was very soft, like a little cotton candy. And this was the first time she took the initiative to hold his hand. It was so beautiful that Enchanting didn't want to let go. He was quiet. After a while, he smiled and said, all right, go in. Didn't you say you wanted to see your mother? He wanted to reach out and knock on the door, but his body was hugged by the little girl. The little girl hugged him. She was only up to his waist and was clinging to him like a koala bear. Enchanting was numb again. He felt that being hugged like this would be wonderful if the rest of his life was like this. But he was a little unwilling. Maybe they would have many more wonderful things in the future. At that moment, the door suddenly opened and Chin Mo came out. As soon as the father opened the door, he saw his daughter taking the initiative. He frowned and said, Huan, why are you acting like a spoiled child again? Huan let out an "oh" and immediately raised her little face to peek inside the office. She said in a very small voice, is Mommy here? Did she think of me today? Or are you busy getting to know the world? What was all this? Chin Mo knew in his heart that it was probably Enchanting who taught him. He silently looked at Enchanting and then said softly, Mom is sleeping. Little Huan asked pitifully, why does Mommy need to sleep? Chin Mo was a little helpless. Because Mommy became smaller. Do you think Piglet sleeps every day? Enchanting was speechless at such an explanation. However, Huan was still young and believed it. She nodded understandingly. Yes, Mummy became a piglet. Piggy. Chin Mo felt that it was a pretty good title. He smiled and carried Huan into the office. After carrying Huan, he gave Enchanting a look. Enchanting should understand the meaning behind it. A man looking at another man. Of course Enchanting understood because Huan had hugged him just now. It was said that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life, so he had been hugged by Uncle Chin's love rival just now. This identity was really, suddenly, he also sympathized with Chin Mo. Not only did he find Yi Xiangnan, but he also found Enchanting. Did Uncle Chin think that he was not jealous enough? After a while, he felt that it was not kind of him to think that way. Chapter 4709. Updated quickly, of course, Enchanting understood because Huan had hugged him just now. It was said that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life, so he had been hugged by Uncle Chin's love rival just now. This identity was really, all of a sudden, he felt sorry for Chin Mo. Not only did he find Yi Xiangnan, but he also found Enchanting. Did Uncle Chin think that he was not jealous enough? Then, he felt that it was not nice of him to do so he touched his nose and followed them in. After Chin Mo went in, he put Huan down and patted her. Mom is in the lounge, go and find her yourself. Huan exclaimed and immediately ran in, but when she reached the bedroom door, her footsteps slowly slowed down, and then she stared at the person on the bed. It was her mother. Her mother was sleeping and looked very sleepy, just like Huan when she was young. Huan looked at her and her eyes felt a little warm. She missed her mother. Little Huan didn't say anything and climbed onto the bed. She snuggled into Yi-Huan's blanket and hugged her with satisfaction. Then, she took a deep breath of her mother's fragrance. Wow, it smelled so good. Little Yi-Huan lay comfortably in her mother's arms. She wanted to sleep but couldn't bear to. In the end, she just hugged her mother obediently until Yi-Huan woke up. Outside, Qin Mo had a meeting and he specially invited Enchanting to attend. Qin Mo raised his hand to look at the time and smiled lightly. Why did you bring Yi-Huan here? Enchanting knew that he would ask such a question, so he said honestly, Yi-Huan misses Auntie. He still wanted to say something but Qin Mo reached out and patted his shoulder. He smiled lightly. You can't even handle a little kid. They were like brothers. Enchanting couldn't help but look up at Qin Mo for a while and smiled slightly. He said yes. Qin Mo also smiled. Let's go to the meeting. Yi-Huan can handle your auntie. Just by imagining the scene, one could imagine what it would be like. In the lounge, an adult and a child were sleeping peacefully, smelling good. Yi-Huan knew nothing about it. When she woke up from her sleep and opened her eyes, she felt a warm little thing in her arms. It was soft and bouncy. Yi-Huan looked down and saw a baby in her arms. The baby, who couldn't sleep, was now sleeping like a piglet. He was drooling and holding Yi-Huan tightly with his two little paws. Yi-Huan's heart warmed as she looked at the little guy carefully. Her long eyelashes were like two small brushes. Her nose was small and straight, and her lips were rosy. She was extremely beautiful. Yi-Huan felt as if her heart had been struck. She stared unblinkingly at Yi-Huan for a long time. Finally, Yi-Huan woke up. She opened her bright black eyes and stared at Yi-Huan for a while before she said coquettishly, Mom. Originally, he was already hugging her. Now that she was in his arms, he wanted to rub her in. Yi-Huan was still a baby. She didn't know what to do. Yi-Huan didn't care about her. She missed her mom anyway. Fortunately, at this moment, Qin Mo appeared at the door. He walked in quietly with a file in his hand. He seemed to have just come from the meeting room. He rolled up the file and knocked on Yi-Huan's shoulder. You're home. Yi-Huan was still in Yi-Huan's arms. She didn't want to come out even after hearing Qin Mo's words. Yi-Huan could only look at Qin Mo. Qin Mo chuckled and spat out 3 words soundlessly, call me big brother. Yi-Huan was furious. He really had a bad taste. However, being hugged by Yi-Huan like this, she really couldn't breathe. She could only silently spit out 2 words, brother. Chapter 47:10. Qin Mo was satisfied. He took Yi-Huan out of her arms and threw her to Enchanting at the door. Let's go back to the villa and wipe her saliva. Really, all bad habits were inherited. She was just like Yi-Huan when she was a child. Qin Mo sat on the edge of the bed. Yi-Huan also sat up and leaned against the headboard. She looked at him. Yi-Huan. Qin Mo reached out and touched her hair gently. He smiled. What do you think after seeing her? Yi-Huan replied slowly, she's very pretty, just like me. Qin Mo pulled her hair. Don't be so shameless, Mrs. Qin. Yi-Huan snorted. I'm telling the truth. Qin Mo suddenly lowered his head and said in a low voice, Yi-Huan's existence means that we used to stop talking. Yi-Huan's face was a little hot. Qin Mo chuckled. I mean, we used to be married. What's wrong? Yi-Huan immediately covered her face. He was so bad. Qin Mo smiled again. Okay, you can get up and go home. Stay in the villa tonight. Oh, Hee-hwan replied and lifted the quilt. Chin-mo helped her put on her coat and buttoned up her hat. Hee-hwan raised her head and said, "I'm not that delicate." Chin-mo's eyes darkened. He reached out and touched her face gently. His voice was hoarse. "You were not in good health before, so you have to rest." Hee-hwan said, "Oh," and then asked naturally, "Why was I not in good health?" "I was in good health before." Chin-mo's eyes darkened. He didn't say anything for a long time. "You can't say it?" Hee-hwan asked him carefully. Chin-mo smiled. "No, it's just that it's too long and I don't know how to say it." "Oh," Hee-hwan replied. She stood up and held his hand. "I'm hungry." Chin-mo couldn't help but laugh. "You're like a piglet, either eating or sleeping." Hee-hwan stuck out her tongue. In fact, she also felt that this kind of life was quite beautiful. The two of them went out together. Hee-hwan was sitting on the sofa, looking unhappy. Shin-ting was squatting beside her, not knowing what he was saying. Shin-ting's expression was gentle, but there was a hint of sternness in it, so Hee-hwan didn't dare to say anything even though she was unhappy. Chin-mo was amused. Shin-ting had managed to control Hee-hwan with just a few pointers. Not bad. The family of 4 was driven back to the villa by Chin-mo. In the car, Hee-hwan couldn't help but lean into Hee-hwan's arms again. Hee-hwan was a little stiff. Although she liked Hee-hwan very much, she really couldn't remember that she gave birth to such a big baby. So, from the company to the villa, Hee-hwan's body was stiff. When they arrived at the villa, even her neck muscles were stiff. However, Hee-hwan was very satisfied. She chattered non-stop along the way. Usually, she didn't have so much to say. Hee-hwan let her be. Listening to Hee-hwan's voice, well, it was quite lively. When they returned to the villa, it turned out that the two men were cooking, while Hee-hwan brought her mother upstairs as if she was presenting a treasure. Hee-hwan tried her best to cooperate, and they went to the master bedroom on the second floor. Hee-hwan was a little excited. She reached out and pushed the door open. Dee. Mom, look, it's all roses. Brother Shin-ting and I specially prepared them. But when the door opened, the roses on the bed had already withered. Chapter 47:11. Hee-hwan's little face immediately fell. She raised her little face and looked at Hee-hwan. Every tone of her voice was filled with dejection. It was clearly fine yesterday. Hee-hwan knew that she was sad, so she reached out and gently patted her little head. Flowers can only live if they are taken care of. Besides, Mommy knows Hee-hwan's feelings now. In her memory, she had never coaxed a child before. So, she coaxed Hee-hwan the same way her mother coaxed Hee-hwan when she was young. Little Hee-hwan was instantly happy. She leaned into her mother's arms and was instantly intoxicated. It felt so good to have her mother back. Then, little Hee-hwan thought that her mother might be back today, but tomorrow, she might leave again. Then, Hee-hwan would become a child without a mother again. So, thinking of this, Hee-hwan couldn't take it anymore and became dejected again. Hee-hwan actually noticed Hee-hwan's emotions. She carried her in and placed her on a small sofa. Hee-hwan lowered her little head and asked softly, "Is Mommy going to leave again after a nap?" Hee-hwan didn't know what to say, so she hesitated for a moment. Then, Hee-hwan began to cry. It wasn't the kind of crying, but the kind where pea-sized tears dripped down and couldn't be coaxed. Hee-hwan didn't know what to do. And as Hee-hwan peed, she stared at Hee-hwan. "Why aren't you coaxing me?" Hee-hwan was flustered. Her coaxing wasn't satisfactory, but Yi Huan was overall satisfied. She pointed out the next step. Hug me. Yi Huan slowly went over and hugged the little one. This time, Yi Huan was completely satisfied. She took the opportunity to ask in Yi Huan's arms, "Mommy, don't leave. Otherwise, the baby will cry every day." Yi Huan didn't know what to do. After hugging for a while, she suddenly thought of Qin Mo. Just as she was thinking, Qin Mo's voice came from the door. "Qin Yi Huan, please start your performance." Yi Huan whimpered and immediately burrowed into Yi Huan's arms, but it was useless. Qin Mo reached out and took her off. Then, he looked at Yi Huan and said, "Don't be fooled. She lives happily with Shinting. Only you will be deceived by her." Yi Huan's eyes widened. She was very dissatisfied with her father. Yi Huan was also shocked. How could this be? Qin Mo walked out with the little guy in his hand and said to Yi Huan, "Come down and eat." Yi Huan nodded and followed him downstairs. Before she left, she took another look at the bedroom. It was quite feminine and beautiful. By the time they finished dinner, it was already late. They had thought that Yi Huan would stay by Yi Huan's side, but unexpectedly, she was tired and directly fell asleep on the sofa. Shinting appeared without a sound and carried the baby away. But Shinting couldn't sleep. Other than his homework, he had to report to Qin Mo about today's meeting. Yi Huan went to the study to deliver some fruits. She felt sorry for him. He was only a teenager and yet he was already working so hard until late at night. Qin Mo only glanced at Yi Huan. He felt that a loving mother would lead to a prodigal son. All the successors of the Qin family were like this. His elder brother, Yi Muyun, would only put in 10 times more effort in the Tang family. And Shinting was just the beginning. If he couldn't even take this little bit of hardship, how could he be the successor of King Entertainment? He only glanced at Yi Huan before she left obediently and returned to the bedroom. After returning to the room, she was a little bored. She looked around and found some of her clothes. Chapter 47:12. After returning to the room, she was a little bored. She looked around and found some of her clothes. Judging from the texture and style of the clothes, they were definitely not worn by an 18-year-old girl. Yi Huan touched the fabric and sighed in her heart. It was really 2019 now. Because she had slept a lot during the day, she looked around casually and wasn't sleepy at all. As she looked around, she accidentally opened the bedside table and her eyes stopped. It was a medical record and the name was Yi Huan's. She also recognized the doctor's handwriting. It was Qin Chen, and the date was a few months ago. Yi Huan flipped through the pages until she reached the end. She saw a few words. Accidental miscarriage. Her eyes froze for a long time and she couldn't move them away. Qin Mo opened the door and saw Yi Huan sitting by the bed with a medical record in her hand. He understood everything at once. He walked over slowly and squatted beside her without saying a word. Yi Huan glanced at him and closed the medical record. Her voice was as soft as a kitten. "Qin Mo, how did I have a miscarriage?" Qin Mo took the medical record from her hand and said softly, "It's my fault." Yi Huan was still staring at his face. Qin Mo placed his palm on her face and whispered after a while, "We quarreled at that time. I didn't notice that you were pregnant and neither did you, so we didn't keep the child." His voice was hoarse when he said that. In fact, that incident not only hurt Yi Huan, but it also hurt Qin Mo. He couldn't let it go. At this moment, the wound in his heart was opened. It was hers and his. Yi Huan's gaze fell into his eyes. After a long time, she stretched out her fingers and gently placed them on the back of his hand. Her voice was hoarse. Chin-mo, do we quarrel and be unhappy? Her voice was a little fragile. She was probably used to his kindness, so when he said that they quarreled and lost their child, she always felt that it was a little unreal. These days, she was so doted on that she almost forgot about Rongyu, and also forgot that they might have hurt each other. She was already a child spoiled by candy. Chin-mo sat on the carpet and pulled her into his arms. He cupped her chin and rested his head on the top of her head. We are an ordinary married couple. Of course, we will quarrel. In fact, the beginning of our marriage was. Chin-mo paused for a while before he slowly said, Rongyu became a vegetable 8 years ago. Hee-hwan's eyes widened. So you're threatening me to marry you? Threaten? Chin-mo's voice was low. You were the one who begged me. Is there a difference? Hee-hwan's eyes widened. Chin-mo, you're really shameless. He just smiled. If he was shameless, Hee-hwan's surname wouldn't be Chin anymore. He sighed. Let bygones be bygones. Don't think about it, okay? Hee-hwan didn't say anything. She rested her head on his shoulder and couldn't help but ask, Chin-mo, why did we fight? After pausing for a moment, she hesitantly asked, do you have another woman outside? This time, Chin-mo gave her a look. What are you thinking about? You're talking nonsense all day long. Hee-hwan lay up and looked at the ceiling. But I don't understand. How could we quarrel until we had a miscarriage? That child is. Chin-mo's voice was a little hoarse. The child is too young. We don't know the gender yet. He turned over and held her in his arms. He kissed her forehead. Okay, don't think about it anymore, okay? Chapter 47:13. Hee-hwan lowered her gaze. She agreed, but she didn't sleep well that night and kept waking up in the middle of the night. After she woke up, she couldn't fall back asleep. Chin-mo woke up too and he chose to stay with her. Knowing that she couldn't sleep, he carried her to the living room and wrapped her in a blanket to watch TV. Eventually, Hee-hwan cried. She had lost her memory. She couldn't remember the existence of that child, but she still cried. Chin-mo felt terrible as well. He comforted her gently for a long time, but she still cried. In the end, he stopped watching TV and carried Hee-hwan back to the bedroom. Every step was heavy as he carried her, and he kicked the door open. Hee-hwan seemed to sense something. She looked up, her eyes filled with panic. Chin-mo was firm. He kissed her forehead and said hoarsely, "Don't be afraid." Harmony, when Hee-hwan woke up in the morning, Chin-mo was no longer in bed. She lay on her side, one hand on her head, and the other on Chin-mo's pillow. She gently stroked the pillow with an indescribable feeling. Chin-mo finished making breakfast. When he opened the door, he saw Hee-hwan's anxious expression. He smiled and sat on the bed. He reached out and pinched her face. "Do you want to get up?" Hee-hwan shook her head. She moved her head beside his legs, looking especially obedient. Chin-mo saw that it was still early. He didn't mind being intimate with his little wife for a while. He didn't know if it was because she couldn't remember at all, but Chin-mo had a different feeling. Only the person involved could understand this feeling. He stroked her hair gently. He heard Hee-hwan's soft voice. "Chin-mo, I want to stay here. Or should we bring Shinting and Hee-hwan to the condominium?" Her voice was very soft. "I don't remember, but I'm Hee-hwan's mother. Losing my memory isn't an excuse to avoid responsibility, right?" Chin Mo couldn't help laughing. He pinched her nose with his fingers and said, "Since when are you so concerned about the overall situation?" "I'm not used to it." He Huan was furious. Chin Mo. He thought about it seriously and said, "You're not doing anything right now anyway." "What do you mean by not doing anything right?" He Huan was unhappy. "My 3 billion box office movie hasn't been stopped yet." Chin Mo laughed. "That's right, director He. It's only been half a month since you lost your memory." He glanced behind her, and He Huan immediately understood. She blushed and buried her face in his chest, acting like a spoiled child. Chin Mo's heart softened. He lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Actually, we should stay alone for a week." How could He Huan not understand? She didn't want to come out and just hugged him. Chin Mo couldn't tell what he was feeling. However, the children were going to wake up soon. It wasn't convenient to say something because Yi Huan could rush in at any time. He thought for a while and whispered, "Let's stay here." Enchanting doesn't have a special room in the condominium. Yi Huan didn't expect him to agree so quickly. She was stunned for a moment. Chin Mo smiled and pinched her face. "Get up. I'll call Yi Huan." "Oh yes, we're going to send the children to school today." Yi Huan snorted. "You've finally found your conscience." Chin Mo, who was already holding the door handle, turned it around and said in amusement, "Who is this for?" "Yi Huan, tell me yourself." Chapter 47:14. Yi Huan didn't say anything after hearing his question. Chin Mo smiled and didn't force her. He left immediately. Yi Huan hugged the quilt and spaced out for a while. She couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of that child. But when she thought of Yi Huan, she cheered up a lot. After all, only what was in her hands was real. Yi Huan thought about it and got out of bed to brush her teeth and wash her face. When she got downstairs, the two children were already sitting at the dining table. Little Yi Huan was especially high-spirited today. Because her father just said that he and her mother were going to live here, she was so happy that she screamed. Chin Mo sat at the head of the table with an English morning newspaper in his hand. He read it calmly while drinking black coffee. Yi Huan sat in her seat. Enchanting greeted her and she said good morning. Enchanting felt like an old friend at first sight and didn't need time to get to know her. Needless to say, Yi Huan was a direct follower and clingy, so there was no separation. Everyone's breakfast was different. It was Chin Mo's intention. Yi Huan drank her milk and ate her breakfast. She couldn't help but feel a little warm in her heart. She thought of last night and blushed a little. She didn't dare to look at Chin Mo. Just then, Chin Mo flipped through the newspaper and looked over. Yi Huan's little heart suddenly thumped, and she looked a little embarrassed. So Chin Mo chuckled and said, "We're an old couple, Mrs. Chin." Yi Huan glared at him fiercely. He was too hateful. One of the two children pretended not to understand, and his young and handsome face was a little red. The other was too young and didn't understand at all. He only knew to look at Enchanting's face and cry out, "Brother, why is your face red?" Enchanting was very embarrassed. "You're wrong." Yi Huan said very cleverly, "I'm not wrong. Brother's face is very red." After she said it with such great fanfare, Yi Huan's face also turned red. Yi Huan looked at one and then at the other, but she didn't understand. Really, it was so strange. Breakfast made Yi Huan want to hide in a hole. It was all Chin Mo's fault. So, she kicked him hard under the table as revenge. Chin Mo glanced at her and then smiled lightly. He was somewhat pleased with himself. He Huan was furious. He regretted his weakness last night, but there was nothing he could do about it. After breakfast, Qin Mo drove the children. After breakfast, Qin Mo personally drove the children to school. After sending the children, He Huan followed him to work. He now took her everywhere he went, just like a small piece of luggage. When they arrived at King Entertainment, He Huan had a cup of tea at Secretary He's place. Just as she was about to leave, one of Qin Mo's secretaries saw the hot search on Weibo and exclaimed, "Oh my god, Ai Jia was arrested." Secretary He frowned and was about to stop him when He Huan asked, "Who is Ai Jia?" Second secretary received Secretary He's warning glare and realized what was going on, but there was no other way. He braced himself and said, "A popular female celebrity. She's now involved in many crimes, so, she's been arrested. Rumor has it that if she's sentenced to at least 10 years, she'll be ruined. But she's pretty much ruined already." He Huan looked at the second secretary, not understanding why she was so nervous. After He Huan walked out, Secretary He lectured the second secretary. "If anything happens, just wait for President Qin to kick you out personally. Didn't you see how much President Qin treasures you now?" Chapter 47:15. After He Huan left, she closed the door. She found it strange that the second secretary's attitude was so strange. But she couldn't ask further. She felt that Ai Jia was a taboo in King Entertainment, and this taboo might have something to do with her. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat as she thought of the medical records from last night. She had fought with Qin Mo, the child she had lost. Hence, she had been restless the entire morning. She opened her laptop and searched for Ai Jia. She was a very beautiful woman, especially her pair of eyes, which were very charming, but also not ordinary. He Huan closed her laptop. She didn't know why she felt flustered, but she couldn't put her finger on it. In the end, she decided to go for a walk. She didn't dare to go out, she couldn't go out, so she just wandered around King Entertainment. When she reached the 23rd floor, He Huan met someone she knew, someone she had known since they were young. Suilio. She was also a beautiful woman. They had grown up together, and the Su and Qin families were close. He Huan looked at her, and she looked back at her. After a while, Suilio said calmly, "He Huan, you win. I've been frozen, and Ai Jia has been arrested. What awaits her is a prison sentence." Qin Mo did all of this to make her smile. He Huan looked at Suilio quietly. She didn't tell her that she had lost her memory. Because she had heard too many keywords. Suilio paused, then continued, "But I didn't expect the arrogant He Huan to choose to forgive me after the miscarriage. After all, Qin Mo really wanted to be with me, and even Auntie Qin agreed. He Huan, I remember that you were very aloof. You went abroad for so many years because of Ai Jia, but now you don't mind at all. Maybe there really is a story between her and Qin Mo." He Huan clenched her fists, choosing to face it calmly. This attitude doesn't seem like it from someone who has been frozen. With that, she turned and left. When she left, He Huan's back was straight, and there was an indescribable loneliness. Women, beautiful women, surrounded Qin Mo. She could guess that he had a story, but she shouldn't have known about it today. He Huan's heart was originally a little pink, but now it was completely gone. Just like Yi Huan when she was angry, every strand of her hair drooped. She didn't immediately return to Qin Mo's office. Instead, she ordered a cup of coffee in the staff cafeteria. Her body couldn't really drink coffee, but she wanted to drink it now. When He Huan was halfway through, tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. She felt wronged, but she didn't know how to question Qin Mo. The past was in the past. He said that they loved each other very much. She couldn't question him because of what others said, but she was sad. She sat there for half an hour before Chin Mo called and asked her gently where she was. Huan sniffled. I'm in the restaurant. I'll be back soon. Chin Mo paused for a moment, then asked her gently, do you have a cold? Why are you sniffling? She made a vague sound, feeling a little embarrassed, and did not want to tell him the truth. How could he not know what kind of person Chin Mo was? He just brushed it off. Come over, secretary, he has brought the food. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Huan agreed, but she sat there for another half an hour before going up. Perhaps it was because of her rebellious mentality. Chapter 47:16. Huan pushed the door open and saw Chin Mo sitting on the couch. There were 2 wooden lunch boxes on the coffee table in front of him. Neither of them had been opened. It was obvious that he had not touched a single bite during lunch. Huan stood at the door. Her lips moved slightly as she felt a little suffocated. Suddenly, she felt that it was inappropriate for her to be like this. She had eaten some snacks at Secretary He's place, and she did not need to work. However, Chin Mo had been busy the whole morning, waiting for her. Huan pursed her lips and walked over slowly. Why aren't you eating? She asked in a low voice. Chin Mo's eyes were closed at first, but he opened them at that moment. I don't feel like eating alone, he said calmly. Huan sat next to him. She opened the lunchbox and said softly, you're not a kid anymore. You need someone to accompany you. Chin Mo's eyes darkened as he stared at Huan. It's different today. His words reminded Huan of last night, and she blushed. She pretended to be fiddling with something as she whispered, what's the difference? The sun still rises and sets, doesn't it? After she said that, she turned to look at Chin Mo. Chin Mo looked back at her with an indescribable look in his eyes. Huan felt her face getting hotter. She lowered her eyes and did not say a word for a long time. After a while, she remembered something. It's time to eat. Chin Mo smiled and nodded. The 2 of them finished eating in silence. Huan was the one who cleaned up after the meal. She was a little absent-minded. Chin Mo finally could not take it anymore. He reached out and grabbed her hand. It's not what you think. Huan's voice was hoarse. Ah. Her eyes widened as she stared at Chin Mo. Chin Mo leaned against the couch and closed his eyes. Didn't you bump into Suilio at the office? How did you know? Huan's voice was soft. Chin Mo smiled faintly. You've been in the office for a long time. Shouldn't I ask? Huan was silent for a while. Don't you want to ask what she said to me? This time, Chin Mo said quite firmly, some unimportant things are already old and rotten sesame seeds. Huan was speechless. She raised her voice. Chin Mo, how is it not important? Maybe it was because of these women that we divorced in the past, or we fell in love. CEO Chin said pragmatically, it's not like what you're thinking, nor is it like what you're thinking. If I liked them, they wouldn't be like this today, right? Huan snorted and said, sounds reasonable. She thought for a moment and said, but Chin Mo, you're talking about them. There are others besides Suilio. Chin Mo paused and then said, Ai Jia, don't you want to ask her? Huan bit her lip and didn't say anything. Chin Mo smiled faintly. There's nothing between me and her. It's too complicated. I'll tell you about it later. Anyway, Rongyu wants to send her in now. She held her breath and looked at him. Why Rong-yu and not you? Because Rong-yu has more right to hate her, but... Chi Nemo thought that Ai Jia must have something in her hands. That was why she let Ai Meng Meng leave so easily. He Huan finally understood what he meant. She widened her eyes and said, but you'll make Rong-yu lose Ai Meng Meng. Chapter 47:17. You'll lose her eventually. Do you think Ai Jia will let go of Ai Meng Meng? They're sisters, and she didn't even let them go before. Now that Ai Jia is like this, do you think she'll let her go? Chi Nemo said straightforwardly. He Huan nodded, then asked in confusion, what did she do? Chi Mo's expression softened, and his voice became even lower. Some things are better left unknown. He Huan forgot everything. He hoped that she could grow up innocently, just like Yi Huan. It was better not to know anything. He Huan stared at him for a long time, then said in a low voice, why do I feel like you're guilty? Chin Mo smiled. I've let you follow me 24/7. What's wrong with that? He Huan was speechless. It was a boring topic anyway, so she didn't want to talk about it anymore. After walking around and eating for the whole morning, she wanted to go to bed. Chi Nemo followed her as soon as she went in. He Huan's eyes widened. Chi Nemo, what are you doing? He said matter-of-factly, taking a nap together. He Huan looked at the time. It's almost 1:30. Don't you have to work? Chi Nemo rested his head on his arm, looked at her, and smiled. I worked too late last night, and I answered your questions just now. He Huan, aren't you going to take responsibility for it? What worked too late? He Huan blushed slightly, then turned her back to him, not wanting to talk to him anymore. Chi Nemo smiled, held her in his arms, and coaxed her. Okay, go to sleep. You'll get wrinkles if you don't sleep well. He Huan immediately shouted, I'm only 18, 33, Mrs. Chin. He mercilessly burst her dream. He Huan snorted. I'm 18. Chi Nemo laughed, and whispered in her ear, then, why are you willing? Ha! He Huan's voice was a little light. Willing. But she immediately thought of what she was willing to do. Her face was a little red, as if it was on fire. Chi Nemo chuckled and did not say anything else. He was indeed tired. He had been taking care of her ever since she lost her memory, and he had been working overtime every day. Right now, CEO Chin just wanted to retire early. He Huan soon fell asleep, but Chin Mo didn't fall asleep immediately. For a superior like him, if he were to fall asleep so quickly, what difference was there between him and a pig? He lay down quietly and thought for a while. He thought about Ai Jia and Ai Mingming's departure. He felt that something was wrong. Rong-yu couldn't find Ai Meng Meng, but in fact, it wasn't that Chin Mo couldn't find her. Ai Meng Meng always needed to use her identity card. At some point, Chin Mo suddenly stood up and walked to the desk outside. He pressed the internal line and said, help me check Ai Mingming's whereabouts at all costs. Secretary, he found the most famous hacker in the industry and found Ai Mingming's whereabouts in less than an hour. It turned out that she had not left B City and had chosen to hide in a small hotel in the outskirts of B City. For the past 2 days, she had rented a very small apartment that was only 28 square meters. Chi Nemo looked at the photo and couldn't help but sigh. Ai Mingming's love for Rong-yu was real. Before Chi Nemo left, he told Secretary He to tell He Huan that he had a business meeting outside when she woke up. Secretary He nodded understandingly, but was still a little worried. If He Huan knows, will she think too much? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.